Welcome to NSC Live, a podcast for diehard Bengals fans. I'm your host, Ace Boogie. My co-host, G, is also with us. It's been a while since you've seen us. Obviously, if you guys have checked out a couple of my other videos, I had a pretty busy past 2 weeks. I had my bachelor party in Vegas. Also had my wedding, which G was able to make it to with her boyfriend, Mike. But yeah, we're back, and we have plenty to talk about because obviously on Friday night we played against the Buccaneers. They came to Paul Brown. We got the win 23-12. But we're going to talk about some of the highlights from that game. So the first thing that I want to talk about, and this is in my opinion, I feel like Michael Johnson is definitely expendable now. Like looking at the game, seeing that we have some young edge rushers out there that were definitely getting around the quarterback, whether it was Jordan Willis, whether it was Chris Smith, the guy that we just traded for from the Jaguars, or whether it was Carl Lawson. It's clear that the writing is on the wall for Michael Johnson. So, G, what are your thoughts on whether or not the Bengals should keep Michael Johnson? Should we just let this thing kind of play out? Or what are your thoughts on Michael Johnson?
Well, I definitely am an advocate of Michael Johnson. I like Michael Johnson. But, I mean, overall, I feel like the veterans as a whole were kind of lackadaisical in their play anyway. And those second and third string defensive players that came in definitely had a different type of energy with them. So, I mean, definitely from this game looking at it, sure, he looks a little sluggish and very expendable compared to the other defensive units that came in. But, again, it's game one in the preseason and definitely need to see how it's going to play out.
Right, definitely. I mean, this is my thing. Michael Johnson, he's a great guy. He's an advocate in the community. But I think I was listening elsewhere, and they were saying that he seems like he has kind of lost his bend. It's almost like Father Time has kind of caught up with him. And just to see how these other guys just exploded, it's almost sad because I like Michael Johnson. He's a great guy, but it's almost like, are we going to pay you $4.5 million for you to not really do much?
Right.
And then it's the fact that they also said that they've moved him to inside, like from outside. So now apparently he's a defensive tackle.
That's interesting too. An interesting move for him, like at this point in his career, definitely.
Right. So I almost like feel like after just watching one game, and I wish G wasn't able to catch the game, guys, but she was able to watch some of the highlights. But if you watch the game, it was like night and day. It was like Jordan Willis was just coming off of the edge with so much more aggression. And it's like, okay, this is what we've been waiting for years. And it's like, we've always been asking for those reinforcements for Geno and Dunlap. And it looks like we have them.
Yeah, definitely.
So in my opinion, I kind of want to see it play out, but I would not be surprised if Michael Johnson was cut. It really would not surprise me, even though I would hate to see him go. It's just, it doesn't seem like he has it anymore. And I don't know if it's a Father Time thing or what it is, but it just seems like he's just out of the mix there.
Well, compared to like Willis, Lawson, Chris Smith, that energy that they were playing with last night, like if they're playing with that energy throughout the season, I don't think that Michael Johnson can keep up or compete with that level. But they definitely brought a different energy. You could definitely see it when they came on the field. And it was good to watch. It was exciting to see. So, I mean, you may be right. It might be that time for Michael Johnson, unfortunately.
And if you guys have any comments on whether or not the Bengals should cut Michael Johnson, definitely leave it in our comments. I see that we have a couple of people here in the YouTube live chat. It looks like Henry said that Jordan Willis is going to be a good pass rusher and is going to stop the run. I agree. I think that Jordan Willis honestly should start. If you do keep Michael Johnson, I think he has to be a rotational player. I think he has to step down to that. And then again, I don't know if you really want to pay that much for a rotational player, but I think Jordan Willis should definitely have a chance at starting at least. So with that being said, we'll move into some of those younger edge rushers that we're talking about. Chris Smith, the Bengals traded, I believe it was a 6th-round draft pick for Chris Smith from the Jaguars. He was a guy that the Bengals, actually, I read today, had their eyes on last year. They tried to trade for him in I think 2015 or 2016, one of the two, after they played against him in the preseason. The deal apparently fell apart. This offseason, they were actually able to make that trade. They actually made the trade right before the draft, which made some people think maybe they won't go edge rusher in the first round. And Chris Smith was just all over the place. It almost kind of reminded me of any of the deals that the Bengals have pulled out in the past, whether it be Reggie Nelson or any of the trades where they end up getting guys that people have given up on. But this guy was like ridiculous. Like he made that number 94 from Pico his own. Like he had the number 94 jersey. And I was sitting there the whole time like, who is this 94 dude that's all over? I think he had like 6 QB pressures or something like that. And I was like, who is this dude? And I'm like, it's Chris Smith. So Chris Smith, what are your thoughts on him, G? Do you think that Chris Smith can make this roster if he's a guy that can constantly rush the passer?
Yeah, I mean, if he's playing consistently the way that he was playing last night, and again, I'm going to say it, like, with that energy, then absolutely, like, I want Chris Smith, like, on that roster and, like, possibly starting, especially if he's going to bring that energy every Sunday.
Right, like, I agree. And it seems like these guys kind of make up that mode of the edge rusher that me and you kind of talked about on, I think, a couple shows a month ago, where they're the smaller guys, where they're like that 6 foot 260 instead of being that, 6'5", 270, 280. They're kind of that Von Miller sort of mode where they're the smaller guys. They're a little bit bigger than Von Miller, but not too much bigger, maybe like 10 more pounds or something like that. But they're faster.
And I was about to say they're quicker.
Right, exactly. And you need that in today's game. Like Chris Smith, I believe, is like 260 pounds. He runs a 4.5. I mean, there's some receivers that run slower speeds than that, and you could definitely see it. So Chris Smith, I think all it takes for Chris Smith is maybe 2 more performances, and I think he's locked into this roster. Let's also talk about another one of my favorites, Deshawn Williams, a defensive tackle who I was kind of worried about going into this game and this year because the Bengals did so much with bringing in all of these linemen, drafting Ryan Glasgow. So I was kind of worried on where Deshawn Williams would fit in. And if you don't remember Deshawn Williams, he kind of flashed 2 years ago in the preseason and ended up making the roster. And he was a guy that actually, I think he actually made the roster. Then they moved into the practice squad. And there was this big deal where he actually turned down a roster spot with the Saints that would have paid him a lot more money just to stay with the Bengals. And so I was kind of upset from the standpoint of, okay, so this guy did that, and now you brought in all of this competition. He's not guaranteed a roster spot. But it was interesting to see that Deshawn Williams actually got some work with the first and second team defense, and also was another key guy that made some edge rusher, well, not edge rusher, but he made like some inside pass rushing. He put that on display during the game. So, G, what are your thoughts about Deshawn Williams? Do you think that he can finally make this roster? Who does he replace? Does he replace like a Brandon Thompson, or what can he do to make this team?
I don't know about as an inside rusher who he would replace right now, but definitely a secure backup spot. Because, I mean, definitely if he's showing this, like he's definitely showing some great play in the first game. But if he continues to do that, I think that a guaranteed backup position would be a good place for him. And then that's his spot on the team. Because for somebody to give up a great paying deal for the Saints to stay with us, that says something. That means he's a loyal player. And if he continues to step it up, then he definitely deserves a spot.
Yeah, they definitely call him, I think his nickname is Baby Geno. So I think he would actually be, like you said, a good backup for Geno for us to have. Let's also talk about Jordan Willis. I believe he was drafted in the 3rd round. It's crazy because before this game, I was talking to some of my other buddies, and I was like, I have heard absolutely nothing about Jordan Willis from looking at training camp tweets. I haven't heard anybody talking about him. I was kind of getting worried, and then the game happened, and I was like, oh, my God, this dude is a monster. And it looks like Ty says that – it looks like – my bad. Ty said something, and it looks like Danny said that for $4 million is just a drop in the bucket. So he's saying that we should keep Michael Johnson as a run stopper and start Willis or Chris Smith. So that's interesting. Mm-hmm. But Jordan Willis is looking like a force to be reckoned with. Do you think that he should start over Michael Johnson, G?
I mean,
do keep Johnson?
Like him and Chris Smith, like they're both like very talented edge, like defensive edge players. And I think that, again, like if they're consistent and they play this way, there's no need for us to hold on to Michael Johnson. It's kind of like us, like, let's just get rid of the past and like, let's just start it over. You got two great players right here. Let's start the future with these players instead of holding on to Michael Johnson. I mean, I think it kind of comes down to that. Like, are we ready to just completely start over, or do we just want to kind of phase into that?
Right, I agree. And I mean, we've gotten rid of players and we've had guys that haven't worked out, like Marcus Hunt. You talk about Dante Moak. Just all of these guys, Sean Porter, all of these guys who just never ended up doing anything. And that brings me into Will Clark. Will Clark really didn't make much noise last night. And to me, the biggest losers of last night, if I had to look at it from an edge rusher standpoint, it was kind of Will Clark, Michael Johnson, and Wallace Gilberry. G, do you see Will Clark making this team, or do you think that it's going to come down? Because I feel like between those three guys, only one of those guys is going to make this team. So could Will Clark be that guy?
I mean, it's between – well, I think it comes down to him or Wallace Gilberry. So to me, I feel like Wallace Gilberry in the long run would be the better player to hold on to. So then you would lose your Will Clark and you would lose Michael Johnson.
Gotcha.
But that's just right now for what it's worth in this one preseason game.
Right. Okay. Well, since we've talked about the defensive line, Andrew Billings, I noticed him on a couple of plays. He definitely flashed, but we can move on to another position. And we can talk about William Jackson III, who displayed some pretty good coverage on Deshaun Jackson and Mike Evans. And it looks like he was pretty good when Winston kind of threw his way. So,
yeah,
looking at things, we talked about on this show that Pac-Man Jones obviously is going to be suspended for the first game. Who would you, in your opinion, like to see? Would you like to see William Jackson III out there, or would it be Darqueze Dennard?
I think they both could step it up a notch based on the game. Like, just watching, it was a few times where the coverage was just kind of like, all right, y'all, like, it could have been a little bit better. But I would like to see William Jackson III. I will say that. Dennard is kind of not consistent enough for me. So sure, I would like to see William Jackson III because I think that he could give us what we want in the coverage in the secondary and everything like that, better than Pac-Man Jones, even with him being suspended in that one game. So, yeah, that's William Jackson III.
Right, I agree. I think now one thing I did notice, Pac-Man was in, I think, for the first couple of series. And he actually did make a good play against Mike Evans in the end zone. Mike Evans really should have caught a touchdown, but he did stop him from catching it. But what was interesting in that game was that they let Pac-Man only play in the nickel, which I've been kind of wanting to see, which is a lineup that's Dre on the outside, William Jackson III on the outside, and then Pac-Man in the nickel. Because when Pac-Man first came to us, you remember back in the day when we had Jonathan Joseph and Leon Hall, Pac-Man was our nickel corner, and it was perfect because you had your best corners on the field.
Right.
And to me, I think that that's what you need to do because, like you said earlier, Darqueze Dennard was beat on a couple of plays in that game, most notably by Mike Evans. So why not have your best three corners out there? And I think William Jackson III, from what I've been hearing from camp and what I saw in the game, he's a pretty good corner. They actually had him up against AJ in camp, and I'm not going to say he shut AJ down, but he limited him a lot more than any of our other corners really ever have in practice. So I think that he could be a star. I mean, we're talking about a guy that has the speed and quickness of a Jonathan Joseph, which is something that we've not really seen from our corner position.
Absolutely.
For a long time. Since he left, exactly. So why not put this guy out there? Obviously, he's pretty solid in coverage, and it looks like Ty actually said that Winston barely threw his way. So that's also a good sign of his coverage. Moving on, let's talk about the most exciting part of this game. We've talked about him numerous times on this show. The man, the legend known as Joe Mixon. G, what were your thoughts on Joe Mixon and what he was able to bring to this offense?
I mean, like, it was, as you said, it was exciting. Like, he definitely kind of lived up to the hype that we were looking for and definitely gave us a preview of what is kind of to be expected of him this season. I mean, he's catching the ball, he's running the ball, nice footwork. I definitely see maybe like it's just kind of like that highlight of our own little Le'Veon Bell, like if you will. And then it's even more exciting because they say he wasn't 100%. Like they say he's like 85% playing on Friday night. So imagine seeing him at 100%. Like definitely looking to see some great things as long as he can stay healthy this season.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just watching this guy, and I wasn't a Mixon hater or anything, but I just kind of wanted. I think me wanting Dalvin Cook kind of made me kind of criticize him a little bit more. But after seeing him, honestly, after we made the pick, I was fine with it. Like whenever you become a Bengal, like whatever my opinions are, I'm gonna change. And I think I compared it to my friend asked me if I was happy with us having him, and I was like, it's almost like instead of getting a Lamborghini, you got to Aston Martin. How could you really complain about that? So to me, like, dude was just dynamic and amazing. I mean, the hype is real. Like the thing that stuck out to me the most with Joe Mixon was his vision. Like him being able to
break the tackle,
cut this way, breaking tackles, miss. I mean, that one play where the guy catches the ball out in the flat and makes 3 guys miss at 228 pounds. Are you serious?
Yard.
Like this dude was, I want to say he averaged 5.2 yards per carry. Dude was very impressive. It looked like he had already played in the NFL before. It looked like it was very easy to him.
Right.
I mean, the guy almost had 50 total yards, and we only saw him in a limited amount of action. And like you said, he was only at 85%. So imagine what the guy could do at 100%. It's just crazy.
Absolutely.
But also another bonus was that Jeremy Hill looked good as well. Like Jeremy Hill was out there playing, doing his thing. So it's going to be very interesting because when you really think about it, it's like you have Joe Mixon, you have Jeremy Hill, and then you have Gio.
That's another thing. So where does Gio fall in?
Gio is back. And I mean, Gio is one of my favorite players. To me, though, I think that they can do this. This is a great problem to have on your hands. In my opinion, what should really happen is it should be, I guess, a 3-headed backfield. But the thing is, with Gio, you can move Gio out at receiver. You can split Gio out. And they've done that numerous times in the past where you can line Gio up as a receiver. You can also do the same with Mixon.
I was about to say, you end up doing that with him too.
Could you imagine coming out in a shotgun formation with like split backs and you got Gio on one side and Joe Mixon on another? Like, I really just don't understand how you're going to stop this offense.
But
like,
is our offensive coordinator creative enough to use them effectively like that?
That's going to be a good question. That's going to be a solid question. I think that I don't feel like Zampese has a choice. I mean, you have to. You're going to have to use these guys. I mean, if you don't, then your job is, I mean, you got to replace them. If he can't work with this offense and these weapons, I mean, Joe Mixon, you got this dude out here getting like almost 7 yards on every carry. Oh my God. And it's only going to help our offensive line and our quarterback more having those threats out of the backfield. So I can't wait to see Joe Mixon the next game. I really want to see if they're going to activate Gio the next game. They didn't have him active the last game, but he's been tearing it up since day one at practice. He was cleared on day one, which is crazy because the dude just tore his ACL, 5 or 6 months ago. But he's already back. He pulled an Adrian Peterson, and he's already back out there. And they said he's looking even better than he was last year, which is almost crazy to even fathom. So all 3 of those guys, man, it can't breed anything but success for that backfield. Right. But let's talk about the offensive line. To me, the most impressive thing after, Joe Mixon and after, or actually before, and let me reverse that. That was the most impressive thing to me was how the offensive line held up. You almost didn't notice them. You had my boy Trey Hopkins out there starting. Aside from like a little hiccup from Cedric Ogbuehi, there really wasn't any pressure on the quarterback like that. And I don't know if it was because Andy Dalton was letting the ball go faster, but it just didn't seem like the offensive line was an issue. Like last year, noticeably, you see that offensive line get pushed back off of the line. You see guys in the backfield that we only got to see them for a limited amount of time. And, we only saw them against the Buccaneers. they still held up very well. They've exceeded, I guess, the expectations set for them. Obviously, we have to see the actual season play out, but it seems like they could be very promising.
Yeah.
G, what are your thoughts on the offensive line holding up better than people initially thought?
So I think they did a good job of holding up, and I don't know, like holding up, but also I'm noting what you said about Andy getting the ball out really quick. Him getting the ball out really quick, like he was, also doesn't mean that the offensive line is also doing too much. Like I want to see a situation where what if Andy had to hold on to the ball a little bit longer? Could they hold up then? Because Andy was getting the ball off like that, like this, like that. And that also kind of led to that interception that he threw, which is kind of disappointing to me, where it's like if we're moving the ball this quickly and you're getting it out there that fast, like you got to be better accurately throwing the ball, watching who you're throwing to, especially if you're in the red zone like that. But that's definitely something to note. They did hold up, but will they be able to hold up if Andy's like under duress? Like, can they do that? And I don't think we got to see that last Friday. I mean,
I think that's a great point. We didn't see the offensive line be tested in that capacity where you said like Andy Dalton had to hold on to the ball. With the interception play, I almost kind of not saying it definitely was Andy's fault. I think that he should have thrown that away. But I kind of start to wonder what the coaching staff was thinking when you're calling 5-yard outs in the red zone. And it's like more than likely the coverage is going to be cover 2. So like that's always a risky throw that you're throwing there. And usually it ends up, they're lucky it wasn't a pick 6.
right.
But it just was kind of like that's something where Andy, I think, as a quarterback, has to sometimes go against the grain. I know he's been with Zampese from day one since he's been there, but sometimes he has to just think in his head, okay, this guy wants me to throw an out, and more than likely there's going to be a corner there. I need to change this play. Let's change this to a run play. Let's audible this to something else that's a safer play to play. You made so much of an effort to drive down the field. To just throw it away like that was a poor mistake. But I think, like you said, that could have been a play where maybe the offensive line, maybe he didn't trust them to hold it up enough. And maybe he rushed that throw and maybe he threw the interception. But, I mean, either way, I'm just glad it was something that a mistake that he made in the preseason versus it being like a game against the Steelers. So I'm glad that we got that out the way now so he can go back and correct it and say, okay, well, maybe next time if I'm seeing this from the defense, I shouldn't throw this. I should just throw it away or I should audible into something else. Real quick, I'm just gonna roll through some comments that we have here. And it looks like Black Nerd wants to know what's up with Billings. I'll talk about that. Thank you, Black Nerd, for the comment. We've got You Broke the Rule Spoon. He said Money Man Mixon. That's pretty cool. Ty said, imagine if we had a good O-line too. Oh, man, that would be, just like You Broke the Rules said, that would be a godly offense. Someone wants to know, Danny wants to know, do we keep 7 receivers and who gets cut? G, do you want to touch on that? Do you think that we'll keep 7 or do you think that we'll have to cut 1? And if so, who will get cut?
I mean, I think we're going to have to cut 1. I'm not sure yet who's going to get cut. I mean, you have to hold on to, I think the 4 that you definitely need to hold on to are Brandon LaFell, AJ Green, of course, John Ross, your pickup, and oh my goodness, I'm losing my name right now. There's one more guy that I think we need to hold on to. But as far as that, I think there's no need for us to hold on to 7 receivers, especially if we have 3 running backs who are as flexible as they are. We can use them in different ways too, so we don't need the 7 receivers. But I don't think yet we know who we're going to hold on to or who those 6 that we are going to hold on to until we keep going further along in the preseason and see what they're doing and how well they're playing.
Right. I totally agree. I think I've been a proponent of keeping 6 receivers, but I could see 7. I mean, the thing that's kind of keeping me away from saying that we're going to keep 6 only was seeing Alex Erickson play yesterday. He did pretty good on the return game, and he did pretty good at receiver. But the thing that kind of stuck out to me more was I really didn't see many people being rotated back there to return kicks. So it's like if we can't see who else is out there, how are we going to cut him? So I'd like to see the Bengals going forward throw somebody else back there. And in practice, they have been, which was kind of weird to me that they didn't do it this last game. And maybe what they're doing is I kind of noticed that with certain positions and players, like with linebacker Jordan Evans, they seem to keep him in for a long time in the game. So I think what they're doing is they're going to probably have certain people that they're kind of wondering about where they play an extended period of time during each game. So maybe next game, instead of having Alex Erickson back there, they may have someone else back there. The only person that I saw get switched out with him was Adam Jones, which we've always seen Adam return kicks and return punts, but I'd like to see what else we have back there. Another thing that really might save Alex Erickson that happened in that first game was Cody Core getting that ankle injury. Cody Core was injured in that game, so I definitely felt like Cody Core was definitely going to be a lock for this team. That might open things up for Alex Erickson to make this roster. You look at the other rookie, Josh Malone, he caught a touchdown in the game. This is supposed to be a guy that was quote-unquote raw as a player, and, I mean, he's catching a touchdown in the first game, and this is a guy that runs a 4.3. I mean, the receiver room is going to be the toughest. To me, that's the toughest cut of this entire process. I still think that if you put John Ross in that third preseason game and he gets back on a return and he takes it to the house, I think Alex Erickson is looking for another job. And but he's a very valuable asset, don't get me wrong. And I think that if the Bengals do get down to the point where if Cody Core is back and they do have to keep 7, and it comes down between keeping that 7 or keeping one of those extra edge rushers, they might have to do something along the lines of trading Alex Erickson. That should also be an option as well because he can help any other team out in the NFL. You got to think about it that way as well.
Mm-hmm.
Getting back to the comments, Tyler Boyd. Oh, yeah, definitely Tyler Boyd. You're definitely keeping Tyler Boyd.
That's who I'm thinking of. That's your fourth.
Tyler Boyd, exactly. Tyler Boyd looked good. I mean, this offense it's just like how many weapons do we have? And I feel like this was a feeling that I didn't have last preseason. Like last preseason, I was kind of like, we're not as deep as we normally are. Like
we just came off of losing Sanu and
right.
Marvin Jones.
And Marvin Jones, exactly. And it was like not even just from the receiver standpoint. It was like from the receiver standpoint, like you said, and from like the entire roster standpoint, it was like, okay, after like the second quarter, it was like, who are these dudes getting in? It's like none of these dudes are. I didn't have that sense with this team, and it's even like guys like Ty said that we should cut Alonzo Russell and Chris Brown, but Chris Brown made some plays in that game too, and it's like, wow, we are so deep. We have so many weapons that it's gonna be hard. It's definitely gonna be hard. You Broke the Rule Spoon says that we should keep 7 receivers and cut Will Clark. Somebody, Sean for the Cam, I think that's my boy Moody. He said that they're not cutting Erickson. Erickson had some nice catches in the Bucs game too. I agree. I think it's going to be hard for them to cut Alex Erickson. It's definitely going to be tough for them to do that. But moving on, let's see. Let's talk about the other star of the show, Jeff Driscoll.
Oh, yeah.
Jeff Driscoll. Gee, what were your thoughts on Jeff Driscoll coming out?
Jeff Driscoll was playing like he wanted that backup spot. Like seriously, like I really would. It was exciting to watch him play. Running it in for the touchdown, just the way he was throwing, making some nice passes. Like he really wants this spot on the roster, and he was playing that way on Friday night. Like he was looking good. And made you kind of think like, well, maybe we can trade A.J. McCarron. He can maybe he's not a better player than A.J. McCarron, but maybe on the same level as A.J. McCarron. So where that if we were to trade him, we're not really losing much or losing anything at all.
Right, I agree. I think you hit that like right on the head. I think that Jeff Driscoll gives the Bengals the flexibility to start entertaining these A.J. McCarron offers. There were rumors, which some people, notably within the Bengals organization, have kind of shot down, that they were offered a second-round draft pick for McCarron. They were offered some deals for McCarron that they turned down. I think now you're going to actually see them entertain them because Jeff Driscoll came out and offered a dynamic that the Bengals really don't have, which is, rushing, being able to have a quarterback that can run as well. You saw him make 2 defenders run into each other. That was crazy. Like, just seeing him do all of that on the field made me feel much more confident in them being able to allow him allowed AJ McCarron to move on. And I think that if you got a deal on the table for some kind of lineman, whether it's an offensive tackle, whether it's, some decent lineman, I think that you have to make that trade. I mean, from what I've heard from everybody talking in camp is that AJ McCarron is kind of upset that he wasn't traded, right? So his whole demeanor and everything in camp has been, I haven't gotten my way, so I want, to get traded. So he hasn't been playing up to par, and Jeff Driscoll has taken advantage of that situation and has balled out. So, I mean, I don't think you want to cut Jeff Driscoll either. So it's like trade McCarron, make room. I mean, Jeff Driscoll showed you what he can do. I think maybe at the most you see him for a second game, and then you make that move.
Yeah, and I mean, and then in the same breath, AJ McCarron gave us some decent gameplay as well on Friday night too. So, I mean, but you don't want to hold on to somebody who, at the end of the day, doesn't necessarily want to be there. And somebody saying they want to be traded, that's not the type of guy that you want in your locker room anyway.
I totally agree.
Hold on to Jeff Driscoll if he continues to play at that same level that he played Friday night.
Right, I agree. Sorry, one second. I was pulling this back up. So let me see. My camera was turned off. All right, sorry about that, guys. But yeah, I totally agree. Jeff Driscoll definitely should have every opportunity to make this team. If AJ McCarron doesn't want to be here, he can hit the road. I have no problem. Like, if you get a second round pick or you get some kind of player for him, you gotta ship him out. Moving back, somebody asked about how long is Core out? I'm not sure. I don't think it's been reported on how long Cody Core is going to be out. Somebody also asked about, a while ago, they asked about Andrew Billings. When I watched Andrew Billings, he was doing pretty good. He was pushing people back. So definitely.
Double teamed a lot.
Oh, let me tell you who else stuck out to me. Kevin Minter, the new linebacker that we signed. It was like a breath of fresh air. It was like no more Ray Maluga. We have a guy in here who's all over the ball. He can cover. Dude looks like he's going to be a steal for us.
I like it.
Dude definitely looks like he's going to be a steal for us for sure. But let me see. Let's see what else. We talked about the offensive line. We talked about the defensive line. We talked about the secondary a little bit. See if I'm missing anything. We talked about Joe Mixon. We talked about Hill. I guess we can start to talk about next week and what we're looking for next week against the Chiefs. G, what are some things that you're going to be keeping an eye out for when we take on the Chiefs next week?
Definitely taking an eye out or looking out on that offensive line, because the Chiefs have a pretty decent defense. And they're definitely going to give our offensive line a real challenge compared to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I think that next week is definitely going to be the defining moment, at least the beginning of the defining moment for our offensive line. They're definitely going to be challenged. So seeing how our offense can click when they're playing a defense like that. And then just watching our defense as well, because the Chiefs have a pretty decent offense with Alex Smith and what's his name, the new guy that played pretty well too.
Mahomes, yep.
Yeah, him, yeah. He played pretty well too. So seeing how our defense can hold up playing against this offense as well, I just think overall the Chiefs are kind of a little bit of a notch up compared to the Buccaneers. So it's definitely going to be more of a challenging game overall for the Bengals.
I agree. They're definitely a better all-around team than the Buccaneers are at this point, especially when it comes to their defense. Like, you hit it right on the head. Like, you got a guy like Tamba Ali and Justin Houston going against Cedric Ogbuehi and Jake Fisher. That's going to really tell us where they're at as far as their skill. I look to see the same thing. Like you said, how can our offensive line hold up against them? It's going to be every preseason game. That's still going to be what we're going to be looking for. I like to see, is John Ross going to play?
Oh yeah, are we going to play? Seriously.
And that's the scariest part out of everything. And I kind of forgot to mention a couple other guys like Ryan Glasgow and some of these other rookies that made an immediate impact. We haven't even seen the number 1 draft pick with John Ross. Right. Is he going to play? And if he does play, is he going to be lined up against I know that the Chiefs have a pretty good corner. Marcus Peters, I think. Yeah, Marcus Peters. Is he going to line up against Marcus Peters, and how is he going to do? Also, how is Joe Mixon going to run against that defense, the Chiefs? Right. I would assume that the Chiefs will have a better defense or a better run defense than the Bucs would, especially with them having a better D-line, so there might not be any holes there. Is Jeremy Hill still going to hold up how he did, like he did in the first game? Is Gio going to play? That's what I kind of want to see. Is Gio going to be out there?
Right.
But also from a corner standpoint, I want to see who's going to be on Tyreek Hill. William Jackson III versus Tyreek Hill would be a great matchup to see. I would love to see them put William Jackson III on them just to see how things go there. And like you said, this is going to be a more interesting game because they have Pat Mahomes as the backup, who actually could possibly end up by the season's end taking Alex Smith's job. We've seen it before with Colin Kaepernick. Alex Smith is 33 years old. Even though he doesn't seem like it, he can still run around, but the guy is 33 years old, and you got a guy that's coming in there. That's a young guy, played pretty good in the last preseason game. Yeah. I mean, the heat is on there, so Mahomes is definitely going to have to test our defense and to see where we are with our depth. So are we going to be susceptible to the deep ball? We'll have to see. But those are kind of some of the things that I'm looking to see. I also want to see more from Andrew Billings when he's going against some of these running backs that they have with Spencer Ware, who's a Cincinnati native. And they also have, I think, Kareem Hunt or something like that. So I like to see what he can do. And I'm really looking at Michael Johnson because, if Michael Johnson has a second dud in a row, I'm almost sitting there wondering why are you guys even keeping him around. Obviously, I'm keeping an eye on Jordan Willis. I'd like to see more from Carl Lawson this game. From what I hear, Carl Lawson, even though he didn't have a bad game, he almost had a sack on one play. Yeah, he had a pretty decent game. He almost had a sack. But from what I hear, he was playing at 75%. But also, he might not play in that game, so it's kind of hard to see. We'll see what they do there. But also Ryan Glasgow, the kid out of Michigan, the nose tackle. I'd like to see more from him. There was another guy. I think he was an undrafted guy out of Notre Dame. I think he was a nose tackle too. He's huge. I think his name is Topo or something. That dude almost had a safety. Yeah. So I'd like to see what he can do too. This defensive line battle is going to be very interesting to see. But those will be some of the things that I would kind of be looking for in this Chiefs game. But G, I'll hit you with one last question, I guess, to see. Well, actually, I have two. One question is with the kickers. Obviously, the kickers were one of the storylines from the game too. You had Randy Bullock, who went out there and made both of his field goals, and then you had Jake Elliott, the rookie, who hit a long field goal. How do you see that kicker battle playing out? That's going to be a tough one.
That is, but I mean, coming from where our history of kickers, I think that's another good problem for us to have because I definitely forgot to mention that I had that written down. Shout out to the kickers. They definitely held it down. And we know how we are when it comes to those field goals and those point afters during the season. We've been let down, unfortunately, plenty of times by the kickers. So they were a breath of fresh air. And like I said, I think that's a good problem to have. Two great kickers. Who we going to pick?
Right, I totally agree. I think I'm going to side with Jake Elliott for the time being, but I think if Jake Elliott, unless he goes out and pulls a Robert Aguayo and misses 2 field goals in a preseason game, then I think that you have to go with Bullock. But man, it's good to see that we have guys that can kick long field goals and make them.
Right.
That's what I'll say there. Now, one thing, G, that I wanted to get your opinion on, and I know that some people were worried a little bit about Cedric Ogbuehi's performance because he whiffed on the play. The Jaguars, they had this whole drawn-out drama with a left tackle, Brandon Albert, who they acquired in a trade for Julius Thomas, right? He's been a Pro Bowler and all of this, and he decided to retire once he couldn't get a deal worked out with the Jags, right? So he was putting in his paperwork, and then during the start of training camp, he was like, okay, I kind of have changed my mind. I'm thinking about coming back. So when he did that, he actually got cut by the Jaguars. So we're talking about a Pro Bowl left tackle that's currently out there on the free agent market. Do you think that the Bengals should sign him?
Left tackle.
Left tackle. He's 32 years old. He's made the Pro Bowl before.
When did he make the Pro Bowl?
Let me see. I'll actually check that out. Let me see if I can look that up. I believe he used to play. I think he also actually played for the Chiefs as well. I think that's who he started his career out with. But the dude basically was like, "Nah, I'm not playing for the Jags. I'd rather retire than play for the Jags." Which is kind of crazy because we used to be in that boat in the '90s.
For real.
But let's see when the last time he made it is. Go ahead.
But yeah, why not? I mean, we've already said, and everyone already has said that our biggest weakness is our offensive line. Like, if you can pick up guys like that and you're not going to have to pay him much, then why not go after him and see what he can do? I mean,
right. I totally agree. It looks like the last time he made the Pro Bowl was in 2015. So he made it twice in 2013 and 2015.
Well, see, 2015 is pretty recent. I mean, that's not like we're saying he made it his rookie season or something like that, and he hasn't made it since. But like the last time he played, it sounds like he was in the Pro Bowl. So why not do it? I say go for it because that's one of our biggest weakness right now is our offensive line.
Right, I totally agree. I think if you cut a guy like Michael Johnson, maybe that frees up some cap space for you to sign a guy like Brandon Albert. And given that, even though he wanted more money at the time, all of his leverage kind of went out the window for the fact that, he threatened to retire, he got cut, and now it's preseason week 1. So it's like, dude, you gotta take whatever you can get right now, and then you have to come in and learn a whole different playbook. Like, to me, they need to jump on dude. I mean, I don't even think it should have been a question. We should have seen a headline this morning like Bengals sign Brandon Albert. I mean, just because you don't know what you actually have behind Cedric Ogbuehi, like I don't even know who our backup left tackle is. I think the last time I heard it was like some undrafted guy, and that's kind of scary. That's kind of scary that you got an undrafted guy as the backup. That's one injury away from blocking for your $100 million quarterback. That's not that's not comforting at all.
Right.
At all. Right. So, but G, did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about before we head out?
I think that's everything. I think especially after you hit on the kickers, that was definitely something I forgot to mention. So no, I think
right, cool. Well, as usual, next week, guys, we'll be back to our regular scheduled time. So that's here Sundays at 11. I know today was at 12. My son was kind of having his own little party before this show, so I had to let him get calmed down. But, yeah, we'll be back here on Sundays, and definitely during the season. It'll be a fun time. And we're actually working on getting one of the stars from the preseason game, the first preseason game, onto the show. So I'm still working some things in with that. But hopefully we can get them on here. I'm not going to reveal who until we actually have it set in stone. But hopefully we get that through. But as usual, guys, we'll leave you with a who day all day, every day, and especially on Sunday.